Yes. How many admirals are there in the Royal Navy?
There are 46 admirals and 88 commodores.
And how many ships?
Surface fleet, 25.
That's rather a lot of admirals.
It is a lot of admirals, but you must remember that the modern Navy is very highly technologically advanced. For example, we have just ordered 2 new aircraft carriers, which will be the largest ships ever to be sailed by the Royal Navy in its entire history.
Yes. Now, these are the HMS Prince of Wales?
Yes, that's right.
And the HMS Camilla Parker Bowles?
No, that was the original idea. But the Queen...
Who's going to be launching them,
who will be launching them, said she couldn't really bring herself to say, I named this ship Camilla Parker Bowles. May God bless her and all who sail in her. So it's going to be called HMS Queen Elizabeth.
I see. And how much will they cost?
£3.9 billion, and they come into service in 2014 and 2016.
And what are they for?
They each weigh 65,000 tons.
Well, that's very heavy, isn't it?
It is very heavy, yes.
And what are they for?
And they are 6 metres higher than Nelson's Column.
And what are they for?
And the flight decks have room for 49 tennis courts, and the hangars are the size of 12 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And you're probably going to want to ask me, what are they for?
Well, yes.
Well, I think I can do no better than choose the words of the Defence Secretary, Des Brown, who said these ships will ensure that we can increase our strategic effort around the world.
Yes. And how do these huge and enormously expensive aircraft carriers actually operate?
Well, an aircraft carrier, as its name implies, carries aircraft.
Yes. And what sort of aircraft?
Well, I'm sorry you asked the question, because at the moment we can afford to either have the carriers or the aircraft, but not both.
Doesn't that present some difficulty?
It does present some... I mean, I'm sure we'll find a way around it.
How?
Taxation is... we'll probably do it. Because we have actually chosen an aircraft to go into these carriers. It is the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35B, which we are buying from the Americans.
And you've chosen this aeroplane because it's obviously the right...
No, the right kind, very much, yeah, absolutely the right kind, yes. It's what's called a STOVL aircraft, a short takeoff and vertical landing aircraft, and it's been in development for 15 years.
Oh, so it must perform perfectly.
I haven't got the faintest idea, because it's not ready yet.
Oh, I see. Why is that?
Well, there have been problems with it.
Such as?
Well, on takeoff, it generates 500 degrees Celsius of heat underneath it, which is enough to destroy the flight deck of any known aircraft carrier. The jet draft is 70 or 80 miles an hour, which on a ship going already at 30 knots means a wind the force of a hurricane will be blowing across the flight deck, thus blowing anybody who's not already fried into the sea.
So, why are we buying these aircraft for this aircraft carrier which is costing billions already?
Because we've only just found out about these problems, and in any case, by the time this aircraft comes into our service, if it ever does, I shall be long retired, as indeed will all my colleagues, and so it'll be somebody else's problem.
So we've actually ordered these things, have we? I mean, couldn't we have got the aircraft from somewhere else?
Oh, we must remember that America is our greatest ally, but they have actually stipulated in the agreement to buy this plane that we can't use it outside the United Kingdom.
Won't that somewhat limit its usefulness?
Possibly, but it will come in very handy if we have any trouble with the Scottish nationalists.
Yes, so the likelihood is that when these aircraft carriers come into service in 2014,
yes,
they're going to have to spend the first 6 or 7 years of their service going around the oceans without any aircraft.
Without any aircraft on them, yes. Well, we could put the Harrier into it, the plane which we use on our present aircraft carriers.
Yes, of course, a very tried and trusted
very
aeroplane.
tried and trusted, yes. It first came into service in 1969. But it's a very good piece of kit, provided you don't use it against a country which has its own air force.
So we need to find an enemy that doesn't have an air force.
An air force, ideally,
I
yes.
see.
Yes.
Well, I know. What about the Taliban?
The Taliban, absolutely ideal enemies for the Harrier, yes.
The only problem is that Afghanistan is about 1,200 miles from the nearest sea.
Yes.
Isn't it? And what is the range of the Harrier?
400 miles.
But hasn't it been made clear that what our forces, the British forces, need are helicopters, armoured vehicles, and lots and lots of soldiers?
Yes, but these things aren't as sexy as aircraft carriers. And in any case, I mean, you wouldn't get one Olympic-sized swimming pool into a helicopter. Whereas, as I've said, you can get 12 Olympic-sized swimming pools into one of these aircraft carrier hangars, particularly if there are no aircraft taking up the route.
I don't want to be unhelpful, but,
no.
I mean, what is the point of having 12 Olympic-sized swimming pools in an aircraft carrier?
What is the point? Well, the point is you could have the Olympics there. I mean, admittedly, by the time the carriers come into service, it will be 4 years after the Olympics is finished. But that only assumes that the Olympics will take place on time, which is not very likely.
But even if the Olympics are 4 years behind schedule, which is quite possible,
yes.
It's also possible, surely, that the aircraft carriers will be behind schedule.
Yes, very likely indeed. But then this is Britain.
Sir George, thank you very much.
Not at all.